From 1978 to 1982, WKRP in Cincinnati became a beloved sitcom that gave us unforgettable characters, witty humor, and a behind-the-scenes look at life in a struggling radio station. While the show continues to hold a special place in fans' hearts, some of the talented actors who brought these roles to life have sadly passed away, many under tragic or unexpected circumstances. In this video, we take a heartfelt look back at the stars we've lost, exploring the highs of their careers and the sorrows that followed. Join us in honoring the legacy of the WKRP cast and remembering the laughter they gave us, and the real-life pain that followed when the cameras stopped rolling. Gordon Jump was born on April 1st, 1932, and took on the role of Arthur Big Guy Carlson in WKRP in Cincinnati in 1978 at the age of 46. The character, inept, bumbling, and endearingly clueless, was both a comic relief and an unlikely father figure in the station's chaotic atmosphere. However, behind Jump's cheerful on-screen persona was a man who carried emotional burdens dating back to a deeply repressed childhood in Dayton, Ohio. Raised in a household governed by strict Baptist values and emotionally unavailable parents, Jump developed a near-obsessive need for acceptance. Bullied throughout school for his weight, awkwardness, and sensitive nature, he often retreated into books and radio shows, early escapes that would ironically predict his future. His career was marked by late starts and bitter disappointments. Before landing his WKRP role, Jump faced years of rejections and was even told by casting agents he was too soft to make an impact in Hollywood. His portrayal of a pedophile in a 1983 Different Strokes episode caused national outrage. Though the episode was intended as a PSA, it stained his career. He received death threats, had to beef up home security, and suffered panic attacks, he later admitted in a church testimonial. While he never admitted to personal scandals, former colleagues hinted at a period of spiritual conflict, possibly involving extramarital flirtations and a brief bout with alcoholism during the mid-1970s before his conversion to the LDS Church. He reportedly grew paranoid later in life, refusing to sign autographs for fear of energy theft. Gordon Jump died on September 22, 2003 at age 71 from pulmonary fibrosis that led to respiratory failure. At the time of his death, his net worth was approximately $2 million, largely from commercial deals residuals from WKRP and a small portfolio of properties in Southern California and Utah. Although often remembered fondly, his life behind the scenes reflected a quiet man at war with fame, faith, and his own buried regrets. Frank Bonner, born February 28, 1942, stepped into the plaid suits and white patent leather shoes of Herb Tarlek in WKRP in Cincinnati at age 36, creating one of television's most hilariously cringeworthy characters, a sleazy, desperate salesman perpetually chasing clients and skirts alike. But the reality behind Bonner's colorful exterior was marred by personal demons and emotional turmoil. Born Franklin B. Boers Jr. in Little Rock, Arkansas, Bonner grew up in post-war poverty. His father, an abusive alcoholic, left the family when Frank was 10, and his mother, reportedly suffering from bipolar disorder, cycled through jobs and relationships while raising 4 children. Bonner escaped through local theater but dropped out of college after his first arrest, shoplifting stage props. His early Hollywood years were rough. Blacklisted briefly for allegedly assaulting a stage manager in 1972, Bonner rebounded into sitcom directing, where he developed a reputation for being both brilliant and volatile. The parasailing accident in 1979, which shattered his pelvis, triggered an addiction to painkillers that lasted nearly 3 years. He eventually recovered but relapsed briefly during a contentious fourth divorce that involved allegations of infidelity, emotional abuse, and financial manipulation. Bonner was married 5 times, and though he had 4 children, 2 of them reportedly became estranged during his final years. One later published a blog accusing him of being absent, angry, and high. Despite all this, he directed over 100 episodes of sitcoms across the 80s and 90s, always returning to Herb Tarlek in fan reunions with reluctant affection. Diagnosed with Lewy body dementia in his 70s, Bonner's final years were marked by confusion, depression, and seclusion. He died on June 16, 2021 at age 79. His net worth, estimated around $3 million, consisted of directing royalties, modest acting residuals, and a small film memorabilia collection that was auctioned posthumously. A flawed man who made people laugh while privately unraveling Bonner's story is a haunting reminder of how fame can both elevate and erode. Howard Hessman was born February 27, 1940, and by the time he embodied the role of Dr. Johnny Fever in WKRP in Cincinnati in 1978, at age 38, he had already lived a dozen lives as a teacher, drug user, protester, and underground radio DJ. Fever, the acerbic, unfiltered burnout with a heart of gold, was more than a character. It was an extension of Hessman himself. Raised in Lebanon, Oregon, Hessman lost his father early and was raised by a strict stepfather whom he later described as a tyrant in flannel. As a teen, Hessman was arrested for marijuana possession and expelled from college. He became active in the San Francisco counterculture, joining the radical improv troupe, The Committee, where he developed a reputation for both genius-level wit and self-destructive indulgence. His real-life use of acid, amphetamines, and cocaine mirrored the chaos of Johnny Fever's on-air antics, and his off-camera antics were legendary. Hessman clashed with CBS executives, once storming off set after network censors cut a line referencing LSD. Known for being prickly and dismissive of authority, he was blacklisted by several studios in the early 90s after reportedly calling a producer a soulless suit during a heated argument. Despite his charm, his romantic life was chaotic. He was briefly married in the 70s to an aspiring singer who later claimed Hessman emotionally manipulated her into a breakdown. Rumors also circulated about his liaisons with young co-stars and crew members, none of which were ever formally confirmed. In later years, he was diagnosed with colon cancer, but kept it quiet from friends. He died on January 29, 2022, at age 81 due to complications following colon surgery. His estate, valued at approximately $5 million, included a sprawling Oregon ranch, partial ownership of a music publishing company, and an extensive collection of counterculture memorabilia. Hessman's rebellious legacy lingers, a man who lived unapologetically, but whose fire often burned those around him. Alene McLerie was born on December 1, 1926, in the bleak, wintry town of Grand-Mère, Quebec. She joined WKRP in Cincinnati as Carmen Carlson in 1979, at age 53, embodying the sweet, nurturing wife of the station manager, Arthur Carlson. While Carmen was the heart of domestic normalcy on the show, McLearie's real life was a labyrinth of repressed trauma and whispered scandal. Her childhood was colored by abandonment. Her father vanished when she was 2, and her mother, a frustrated actress herself, dragged young Alene across the border to New York, often leaving her alone in apartments while chasing auditions. McLerie found escape in dance, but her career was nearly derailed in the 1940s when she had a nervous breakdown after collapsing from exhaustion during a Broadway run. Though she was revered in musical theater, her intensity alienated directors and co-stars. One producer called her terrifying in a tutu. Despite a marriage to actor George Gaines that spanned over 60 years, close friends claimed theirs was a Cold War marriage with long, silent stretches and at least 2 suspected extramarital affairs. The real tragedy of her life came with the death of their only son, Matthew, in a drowning accident in 1983, an event she never publicly acknowledged and which left her emotionally distant even from colleagues. Her later years were plagued by bitterness at being typecast as nice women, and in private she expressed disdain for sitcom work, once calling WKRP a paycheck disguised as art. Rumors in the 1990s claimed she suffered from undiagnosed bipolar disorder, though it was never confirmed. Diagnosed with Alzheimer's in the early 2000s, McLerie spent her last years confused and occasionally violent, requiring 24-hour care. She passed away on May 21, 2018 in North Bend, Washington at age 91. Her net worth was around $2 million, largely from prudent real estate investments made during her more lucrative Broadway years. However, documents uncovered after her death hinted at a long-lost sibling she had financially supported in secret, possibly a half-brother born from her mother's rumored affair with a French politician during World War II. Ian Wolfe, born November 4th in 1896 in Canton, Illinois, stepped into the role of Hirsch, the dryly sarcastic butler, to Mama Carlson in 1981 at the staggering age of 85. With over 400 credits to his name, Wolfe was a fixture of classic Hollywood, but a ghost-like one, his face remembered while his name was often forgotten. That was by design. Wolfe, a World War I veteran who had seen death up close in the trenches of France, carried secrets no script could ever capture. His poetry, written in the 1920s and published under pseudonyms, reflected a deeply tortured worldview, filled with cryptic references to lost lovers and betrayals in the industry. Rumors persisted that Wolfe had briefly belonged to a communist theater group in the 30s, making him a target during the McCarthy era. Though never officially blacklisted, insiders suggested he was quietly benched for a decade after refusing to testify against colleagues. His return to Hollywood in the 50s was cautious and calculated. He accepted character roles, avoided political conversations, and rarely socialized. Wolfe's marriage to Elizabeth Schroeder was stable, but strangely distant, described by neighbors as more of a legal arrangement than a romantic partnership. He kept a private study locked at all times, and after his death, a cache of letters and journals hinted at a long-term affair with a young male screenwriter during the 1940s, an explosive revelation in a time when homosexuality could destroy careers. Though never linked to scandal publicly, he had a reputation among directors for being uncooperative in subtle ways, frequently rewriting lines, slowing down production, and once walking off set during a live radio drama after a producer questioned his interpretation. Wolfe passed away on January 23, 1992, at the age of 95, his mind still sharp, but his body ravaged by time. He died in Los Angeles, leaving behind a modest estate worth about $500,000, mostly tied up in antiquated real estate and royalties. Curiously, none of his belongings went to family. His will left everything to a theater foundation in New York, under the stipulation that his name never appear on any building or plaque. Hamilton Camp, born on October 30th, 1934 in bomb-ravaged London. England played Buddy Gravers in WKRP in Cincinnati in 1978 at age 44. His character, a quirky, wide-eyed oddball, added a layer of unpredictable charm to the show's already colorful ensemble, and viewers loved his unpredictable timing. But Camp's real life was far stranger and more disjointed than the sitcom ever hinted. Born to parents who divorced during the height of the Blitz, he was left emotionally scarred from constant displacement during the war, passed between neglectful relatives and overburdened foster homes. Camp turned to acting and folk music as a form of emotional escapism, but even that was riddled with contradictions. Though a talented singer-songwriter and prolific voice actor, most notably as Gizmo Duck in DuckTales, he deliberately sabotaged numerous career opportunities due to his extreme spiritual devotion to the Subud movement. Insisting on being called Hamid Hamilton Camp, he alienated producers and was blacklisted from several studios after refusing roles that clashed with his metaphysical beliefs. Friends described him as both genius and zealot, at times refusing to speak for days, claiming he was in spiritual realignment. His biggest professional collapse occurred in the mid-1990s when he was dropped from a high-profile Disney animated series over contract disputes related to his insistence on including Subud symbolism in scripts. Camp also struggled privately with a compulsive need for validation, and rumors circulated about emotionally abusive behavior toward collaborators who didn't respect his spiritual journey. Despite a resume of nearly 200 credits, he died alone from a heart attack on October 2, 2005, in Los Angeles at age 70. His modest $1 million net worth, a patchwork of royalties, odd jobs, and music, reflected a life full of detours and abandoned chances. Though beloved by fans, the industry often whispered that Hamilton Camp's greatest enemy was himself. Hugh Gillin, born July 14, 1925, in Galesburg, Illinois, was 53 when he appeared in WKRP in Cincinnati in 1978 as Cal Owens, a gruff and no-nonsense character who added grit to the sitcom's chaotic energy. Though his screen presence was formidable, his real life carried a silent agony few ever uncovered. A decorated World War II veteran, Gillin returned home after serving in the Pacific Theater with a Purple Heart and deep emotional scars. He rarely spoke of the battlefield, but colleagues noticed his tendency to retreat into long silences or erupt in sudden anger, likely symptoms of undiagnosed PTSD. Despite carving out a respectable career as a character actor typecast as lawmen or authority figures, he never achieved leading man success, something that reportedly gnawed at his self-worth. In the mid-1980s, he suffered a humiliating professional blow when cast in a major Clint Eastwood film, only to be fired mid-production for not fitting the tone, which insiders attributed to memory lapses and clashing egos. His long marriage to Elizabeth Gillin was strained. Private letters revealed he was emotionally distant, and during the 1970s, he was rumored to have fathered a child during a brief affair on a Western film, said an allegation he never addressed publicly. His later years were shadowed by financial struggles and declining health. After being diagnosed with cancer, Gillin became reclusive, living in a small rental home near San Diego, often refusing visitors even from his own children. He passed away quietly on May 4, 2004, at age 78 from complications related to cancer and heart disease. His estate, totaling about $1 million, was split among his surviving children, though one contested the will, alleging a prior agreement was voided during his illness. Though never a household name, Gillin's life told a darker story of Hollywood's forgotten ranks, of trauma, sacrifice, and the price of always being cast in someone else's narrative. Mary Frann was born on February 27, 1943 in St. Louis, Missouri, and appeared as the refined Avis Dropkin in a 1981 episode of WKRP in Cincinnati when she was 38. Her performance was subtle and poised, winning over audiences with elegance, yet behind that television-perfect demeanor was a life riddled with turmoil and image obsession. Raised in a hypercritical Midwestern household, Mary-born Mary Frances Luke was pushed into child pageants and TV roles by a mother obsessed with fame, setting off lifelong body image issues. She struggled quietly with bulimia throughout her career, masked by her always polished public appearances. Though best known for her role as Joanna Loudon on Newhart, many former co-stars described her as icy and hyper-controlling, on set insisting on rewriting dialogue and fighting over camera angles. Her 1982 divorce from T.J. Escott was bitter, reportedly triggered by his public accusations of her multiple affairs with producers, including one powerful CBS executive who allegedly protected her from a sexual misconduct investigation involving a young actor. Frann's decade-long relationship with Jonathan Cookman Jr. was equally unstable, marred by explosive fights and long separations, and she was said to have feared commitment due to early emotional abuse. Friends say she became increasingly isolated in her 50s, refusing public engagements and spiraling into insomnia and prescription pill dependency. She was found dead in her Beverly Hills home on September 23, 1998. At just 55, her cause of death ruled a heart attack in her sleep. The whispers of overdose still linger. At the time of her death, her estate was valued at around $2 million, mostly from Newhart syndication and modest investments. Behind the beloved TV wife was a woman trapped by fame, scarred by personal betrayals, and haunted by the image she was forced to uphold. Max Wright, born August 2, 1943 in Detroit, Michigan, portrayed Frank Bartman in WKRP in Cincinnati in 1982 at the age of 39. His character, a rigid, emotionless administrator, was deliberately written to irritate the audience, and Wright nailed the performance with unnerving precision. Audiences remembered the role for its dry, bureaucratic menace and irony given Wright's own private chaos. In real life, Max was a man drowning beneath his polished surface. Born into a troubled household where emotional repression was the norm, he grew up with a cold, distant father and a mother who suffered from untreated mental illness. His childhood was marked by loneliness and constant ridicule from peers for his lanky appearance and reedy voice. As a teen, he escaped into theater, masking his depression with performance. Despite success on stage, Wright's Hollywood ascent was rocky. Though he landed roles in Buffalo Bill and Misfits of Science, he struggled with addiction behind the scenes. His biggest break came with ALF, but he loathed every moment, later confessing he felt like a prop for a puppet, and that the atmosphere was toxic and joyless. Co-stars confirmed he often stormed off set and once punched a wall after a particularly difficult taping. His most humiliating scandal came in 2001 when the National Enquirer released footage of him using crack cocaine and soliciting sex from homeless men in seedy motels. The footage shocked the public, destroying his reputation overnight and leading to rehab stints he later abandoned. His marriage, already strained, crumbled shortly after. Wright's personal life was equally tragic. His wife Linda died in 2017 after a long illness, and his children reportedly became estranged during his spiral. Wright's final years were a mix of recovery and regret, plagued by lymphoma that returned after initial remission. He died on June 26, 2019 in Hermosa Beach, California, at age 75 from complications of the disease. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at $3 million, consisting mostly of residuals and property holdings in California. Don Diamond, born June 4, 1921, was 58 when he briefly appeared as delivery man Marin 1 in WKRP in Cincinnati in 1979, a blink and you'll miss it role that encapsulated a career defined by marginalization. While modern viewers may gloss over, the part Diamond's face was once a fixture on television, often typecast in ethnic sidekick roles that today would spark outrage. Raised in a lower-middle-class Brooklyn neighborhood during the Depression, Diamond's early life was one of poverty, frequent eviction, and anti-Semitic harassment that led him to downplay his Jewish heritage throughout his career. His initial ambition was to be a serious dramatic actor, but a thick New York accent and a racially ambiguous look landed him in a narrow lane. He played countless foreigners with cartoonish accents in F Troop Zorro and other mid-century fare. Though his characters brought laughs, Diamond privately resented the stereotyping and often referred to himself as a punchline in brownface. The bitterness boiled over in the 1970s when he sued a casting director for racial discrimination, a case that was quietly settled and buried, likely costing him larger roles. Diamond also battled compulsive gambling and reportedly lost his life savings twice, once at a racetrack and once in a disastrous investment scheme involving a fake Native American-themed theme park in Arizona. He never had children, and his only marriage ended in the late 1960s after years of reported emotional detachment and infidelity. In the 1980s, he tried to rebrand himself as a voice actor, but struggled with inconsistent work and alcoholism. He retreated from Hollywood completely in 1990, moving to a quiet retirement community in Palm Desert. There he was known for rants about how the industry ruined his life. Don Diamond died of natural causes on June 19, 2011, at age 90 in California. His net worth at death was around $500,000, made up of a modest home, a dwindling pension, and a few remaining residual checks. He left most of his estate to an obscure cat rescue organization, his final act of rebellion against an industry that never gave him the dignity he craved. Sylvia Sidney, born August 8, 1910 in the Bronx, New York, appeared as Lillian Carlson in the 1978 pilot episode of WKRP in Cincinnati at the age of 68. She brought razor-edged authority to the role, portraying the station owner with such severity that it reportedly intimidated network execs, leading to her replacement. But such clashes were par for the course in Sidney's career. Born to Russian Jewish immigrants and raised by a single mother after her father abandoned them, Sidney grew up with abandonment wounds that hardened into defiance. She hated her given name and reinvented herself early, both in name and temperament. At her peak in the 1930s, she was one of Hollywood's top-paid stars, known for playing doomed women in gritty dramas. But off-camera, her reputation was terrifying. She reportedly berated directors, fired agents over minor disputes, and famously stormed off sets. Co-stars described her as volatile, combative, and emotionally erratic. Her 3 marriages all ended badly, with the most bitter being to publisher Carlton Alsop, who accused her of cruelty and narcissism in court. Her only child son, Jacob, died in his 30s from Lou Gehrig's disease, a trauma that reportedly plunged her into years of spiritualism and seances seeking contact with the dead. For decades, Sidney was rumored to engage in occult rituals and surround herself with mystics. She had a strained relationship with Hollywood, blaming it for her personal losses and blacklisting during her career slump in the 1950s. She made a comeback in her later years, notably in Beetlejuice, but remained difficult. When she died on July 1, 1999 of esophageal cancer at 88, she left behind a $2 million estate, mostly from smart investments in art and property, but she died alone, reportedly estranged from most of her surviving family. Even in death, Sidney was enigmatic, equal parts genius and fury. Her name evokes reverence and caution, a legend who refused to soften. Woodrow Parfrey, born October 5, 1922 in New York City, played the offbeat Dr. High Monroe in WKRP in Cincinnati in 1978 at age 56. Known for embodying strange, often unsettling characters, Parfrey's real life mirrored the chaotic energy he brought to screen. Before acting, he endured the horrors of Woybewanum, captured and nearly starved as a POW during the Battle of the Bulge, a trauma that haunted him. After the war, Parfrey reinvented himself as an actor, enrolling in the actor's studio but reportedly clashing with instructors over what he saw as emotional exhibitionism. On stage and screen, he was magnetic but unpredictable, earning a reputation for brilliance laced with instability. Colleagues found him mercurial, prone to mood swings, and obsessed with control. Though never embroiled in public scandal, many quietly avoided working with him twice. Parfrey was fixated on privacy, and rumors abounded that he kept a blacklist of directors he swore never to speak to again. In the 1970s, he was slated for a lead in a cult horror franchise, but was suddenly dropped. Sources claimed he threatened the producers over script changes. That professional humiliation reportedly sent him into a deep spiral. Parfrey never married publicly, though whispers about long-term affairs, some with married actresses, circulated for years. He fathered at least one son, Adam Parfrey, who would later publish controversial fringe literature. Their relationship was rocky, with some alleging Woodrow disapproved of Adam's work. Despite his brilliance, he was haunted by paranoia, believing his phone was tapped, and his mail intercepted a belief intensified after being passed over for several high-profile roles. On July 29, 1984, he died suddenly of a heart attack in Los Angeles. He was 61. He left behind a net worth of about $1 million accumulated from years of character work and rare manuscript collecting. After his death, he was all but forgotten until film historians unearthed his contributions, painting him as one of the most fascinating enigmas of mid-century American acting. Rene Enriquez, born November 24, 1933 in Granada, Nicaragua, portrayed Jose Jorge Rodriguez in WKRP in Cincinnati in 1979 at age 46. Though the character was brief, it quietly brought ethnic diversity to the ensemble, a rarity in late 70s network television. Enriquez, however, lived a life far more complex than the roles he was allowed to play. Born into a rigid conservative Nicaraguan household plagued by poverty and silence, his early years were marked by emotional neglect and suppressed identity. After emigrating to the U.S., he battled not just to survive in a new land, but to be seen in an industry that marginalized Latin actors. Typecasting was relentless. While he gained praise for his performance as Latona Ray Cayetano on Hill Street Blues behind the scenes, he felt tokenized. His dismissal from the show was sudden and devastating, sparking quiet rumors of racial politics and producer clashes. Though officially amicable sources hinted at a blow-up over creative direction, he harbored deep resentment and later referred to it as a betrayal. Off-camera, Enriquez was guarded, some said paranoid. He reportedly lived in near isolation for years, struggling with internalized shame over his sexuality in a less tolerant era. In the mid-1980s, he was diagnosed with HIV, a diagnosis he hid even from close friends. As his health declined, he continued to work sporadically under the guise of exhaustion. When he died on March 23, 1990, at age 56 in Los Angeles, early reports lied, citing pancreatic cancer. Only later was it confirmed he died from AIDS-related complications, revealing the deep stigma he feared. Despite decades in the industry, his net worth was modest $500,000 with few lasting royalties. He owned a modest condo and left no heirs. After his death, some peers reflected on his immense talent and deep sadness, lamenting how Hollywood failed him, both in life and legacy. To this day, Enriquez remains a somber symbol of how many were erased by fear and silence. Carol Bruce, born November 15, 1919 in New York City, portrayed the imperious and emotionally frigid Lillian Mama Carlson in WKRP in Cincinnati in 1979 at the age of 60. Her character was a calculating power broker who wielded control over the radio station like a chessboard, often reducing her son Arthur to a trembling puppet. Audiences were both enthralled and unsettled by her icy demeanor, a mirror, some said, of the woman herself. Behind the velvet voice and Broadway grace, Bruce harbored decades of bitterness over a career she believed never reached its deserved zenith. She began as a promising nightclub singer in the 1940s, only to see her star wane amidst rumors of difficult behavior. Bruce had an infamous reputation backstage for micromanaging productions and bullying less experienced cast members. A rumored affair with a powerful married producer in the early 50s nearly destroyed her chances at a comeback, leading to a quiet blacklisting from major New York venues. Her brief marriage to Milton Nathanson dissolved without public explanation, but insiders close to the family suggested years of emotional abuse and infidelity, with Bruce allegedly keeping detailed journals documenting his indiscretions. Her daughter Andrea struggled with substance abuse throughout the 80s, causing a public family rift when Bruce refused to support her financially, even after Andrea married jazz guitarist Larry Coryell, whose own addiction issues only deepened the familial chaos. Friends described Bruce in her later years as paranoid and deeply resentful, often claiming people were stealing her legacy. When she died on October 9, 2007 in Woodland Hills, California, from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, she was 87. Her estate, once believed to hold more than $4 million in Broadway earnings, and property had been dwindled to roughly $1.5 million, some of it lost in ill-advised investments and alleged theft by former assistants. Her death went largely unremarked in mainstream media, a quiet end to a life that had once thundered on stage. Michael Pataki, born January 16, 1938 in Youngstown, Ohio, appeared in WKRP in Cincinnati in 1980 at age 42, playing Detective Alcorn, a hard-nosed officer whose dry delivery added gravity to the show's otherwise chaotic energy. Viewers appreciated his no-nonsense demeanor, but few realized how closely the character mirrored the actor's own emotional detachment. Raised in a strict Eastern European immigrant household, Pataki endured physical punishment and authoritarian parenting that bred both discipline and repressed rage. He never spoke publicly about his upbringing, but insiders say it shaped his gruff persona and volatility. Despite a commanding voice and classical training, Pataki was repeatedly passed over for leading roles, turning instead to B-movies, and cult horror his breakout behind the camera, being the disturbing Mansion of the Doomed, notorious for its grotesque surgical scenes. His career was full of friction. While he never had a public scandal, industry gossip painted him as combative and unpredictable. He had legendary disputes with directors, and one infamous incident saw him walk off a set after punching a prop table mid-scene. Behind his success in Rocky IV and Star Trek, Pataki was deeply insecure, turning to heavy drinking in the 1980s that quietly stunted his rise. His romantic life was equally unstable. He never married but was involved in a number of stormy affairs, including one with a married producer's wife that resulted in a physical altercation on a studio lot. A lesser-known blow came in the late 90s when a lucrative animation deal fell through after he allegedly berated a younger co-star during a voice session. Though he later found steady work in voice acting, he remained embittered. Diagnosed with cancer in the mid-2000s, Pataki refused sympathy, withdrawing from friends and family. He died on April 15, 2010 in Los Angeles at age 72. His net worth at death was around $1 million, shockingly low given his prolific output. Thank you for watching as we reflected on the lives and legacies of the actors from WKRP in Cincinnati who are no longer with us. Their humor, charm, and unforgettable performances brought joy to millions and helped shape the show into a classic. While their journeys ended far too soon, their impact lives on through every scene, every laugh, and every memory they've left behind. As we honor their lives, we're reminded